Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Søren Kierkegaard. Have you ever watched a fox hunt, marveled at their intelligence, their quick wit, their ability to solve complex problems with elegant precision? Meet Sage, a fox whose brilliant mind had become both her greatest asset and her most exhausting burden. She was known throughout the forest for her cleverness, her ability to think 3 steps ahead, her talent for finding solutions that others couldn't even see. But somewhere along the way, that beautiful, sharp intelligence had turned inward, becoming a maze she couldn't escape. Sage hadn't always been trapped in her own thoughts. There was a time when her quick mind served her well, anticipating the changing seasons, remembering where the best food sources were hidden, solving problems for other forest creatures with innovative approaches. Her fellow animals sought her counsel because she could see patterns and possibilities that escaped others. Her mind was like a perfectly tuned instrument, producing brilliant melodies of insight and wisdom. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, that instrument began to play different tunes. Instead of solving external problems, Sage's mind started creating internal ones. Simple decisions became elaborate calculations of every possible outcome. A basic choice like which path to take through the forest would spawn dozens of scenarios. What if the left path has predators today? But what if the right path is muddy and I get stuck? What if I choose wrong and waste time? What if there's something I'm not considering? What started as careful planning evolved into something far more consuming. Sage would wake up each morning with her mind already racing, generating lists of potential problems that might occur during the day. What if it rains and I can't find shelter? What if the other foxes notice I've been anxious? What if my anxiety makes me make mistakes? What if making mistakes confirms that I'm not as smart as everyone thinks? The thoughts came faster and faster, each one branching into multiple new concerns, like a tree growing and fast forward. Sage found herself physically running in circles, her body trying to match the pace of her spinning thoughts. She would start toward one destination, then suddenly pivot toward another as a new worry struck her. From above, her movements began to look like complex spirals and loops, as if she were following an invisible labyrinth that only she could see. Other animals in the forest began to notice Sage's strange new patterns. "She used to be so decisive," observed an old owl. "Now she starts and stops, changes direction mid-stride." A rabbit mentioned seeing Sage pacing the same small area for hours, muttering to herself about scenarios that seemed increasingly unlikely. The very animals who once sought her wisdom now watched with concern as she appeared to argue with invisible opponents. Sage was aware of her behavior but felt powerless to stop it. The more she tried to control her thoughts, the more chaotic they became. She attempted to logic her way out of anxiety, but her brilliant mind only generated more sophisticated worries. "I'm smart enough to figure this out," she would tell herself, which immediately triggered a new spiral. "But what if I'm not? What if my intelligence is failing me when I need it most? What if everyone realizes I'm not as clever as they thought?" The thoughts came faster and faster, each one branching into multiple new concerns, like a tree growing and fast forward. Sage found herself physically running in circles, her body trying to match the pace of her spinning thoughts. She would start toward one destination, then suddenly pivot toward another as a new worry struck her. From above, her movements began to look like complex spirals and loops, as if she were following an invisible labyrinth that only she could see. Other animals in the forest began to notice Sage's strange new patterns. "She used to be so decisive," observed an old owl. "Now she starts and stops, changes direction mid-stride." A rabbit mentioned seeing Sage pacing the same small area for hours, muttering to herself about scenarios that seemed increasingly unlikely. The very animals who once sought her wisdom now watched with concern as she appeared to argue with invisible opponents. Sage was aware of her behavior but felt powerless to stop it. The more she tried to control her thoughts, the more chaotic they became. She attempted to logic her way out of anxiety, but her brilliant mind only generated more sophisticated worries. "I'm smart enough to figure this out," she would tell herself, which immediately triggered a new spiral. "But what if I'm not? What if my intelligence is failing me when I need it most? What if everyone realizes I'm not as clever as they thought? Sleep became elusive as her mind refused to settle into stillness. Even in moments that should have been peaceful, watching sunset paint the forest in golden light, feeling a gentle breeze through her fur, Sage's thoughts would intrude with urgent bulletins. You should be doing something productive. There are problems to solve, dangers to anticipate. You're wasting time being calm when you should be planning for catastrophe. The forest itself began to feel different to Sage. Familiar paths seemed fraught with potential hazards. Friendly encounters with other animals became complex social calculations. Did that squirrel seem irritated when I said hello? Maybe I said it wrong. Maybe I should apologize. But what if apologizing makes it weird? But what if I'm overthinking this? But what if I'm underthinking it? Her appetite diminished as her stomach stayed tied in knots of anticipation for problems that might never materialize. Her beautiful fox coat began to lose its luster as stress took its toll. The very intelligence that had once made her feel confident and capable now felt like a burden she couldn't put down, a radio she couldn't turn off, a passenger in her own mind who wouldn't stop asking, what if? One autumn morning, exhausted from another sleepless night of mental gymnastics, Sage found herself in the center of a clearing, literally running in tight circles while her mind spun through its familiar loops of worry. Around and around she went, faster and faster, until she became dizzy and collapsed in a heap of red fur and heaving breath. As she lay there, something unprecedented happened. Her mind became quiet. Not by choice, not through effort, but through sheer exhaustion. In that moment of stillness, Sage heard something she had almost forgotten, the sound of the forest itself. Wind through leaves, birds calling to each other, the gentle rustle of small creatures going about their daily business. For the first time in months, Sage was present in her body, in the moment, in the actual world, rather than the world of potential catastrophes her mind had been constructing. A wise old badger, who had been quietly observing from the edge of the clearing, approached slowly. "Your mind is like a beautiful racing car," he said gently, "but you've been driving it on a circular track instead of using it to go somewhere." "I can't make it stop," Sage whispered. "It just goes and goes." "Of course it does," the badger replied. "You've been trying to stop a river by standing in it and pushing against the current. What if, instead, you learned to step onto the riverbank and watch it flow?" The badger taught Sage something revolutionary. She didn't have to fight her thoughts or try to eliminate them. Instead, she could learn to observe them with curiosity rather than judgment. "Notice when your mind starts spinning," he suggested, "and instead of joining the spiral, try saying, 'Oh, there I go, thinking in circles again. How interesting that my mind does this when it's trying to keep me safe.'" Sage began practicing this new approach. When she caught herself generating elaborate worst-case scenarios, instead of berating herself for being anxious, she would pause and think, "My brilliant mind is trying to protect me by preparing for every possibility. Thank you, mind, for caring about my safety. Now, what actually needs my attention right here, right now?" She learned to distinguish between productive problem-solving and unproductive worry-spinning. Productive thinking had clear objectives and led to actionable steps. Worry spinning was circular, repetitive, and focused on problems that were either unsolvable or not actually happening. Gradually, Sage developed what she called thought hygiene, regular practices that helped her mind stay clean and focused. She would take daily walks with the specific intention of noticing her environment rather than her thoughts. She practiced the 5 senses check-in, naming one thing she could see, hear, smell, touch, and taste to anchor herself in the present moment. Most importantly, Sage learned to be compassionate with herself about her anxiety. She realized that her spinning thoughts weren't a sign of weakness or failure. They were a sign of a caring, intelligent mind that sometimes got overzealous in its job of keeping her safe. Her running in circles gradually transformed into purposeful movement. She still thought deeply about problems, but now her mental energy moved in spirals that widened outward toward solutions rather than tightening inward toward worry. She became known not just for her intelligence, but for her wisdom about how to use intelligence skillfully. When other forest creatures came to her with their own spinning thoughts, Sage would share what she had learned. Your mind is not your enemy. Your anxiety is not a character flaw. It's information about how much you care, how much you want to do well, how much you want to keep yourself and others safe. The goal isn't to stop caring, it's to learn how to care wisely. If you, or a fox you know, finds themselves running in mental circles, remember Sage's journey. Remember that intelligence and anxiety often go hand in hand, that caring deeply can sometimes manifest as worry, and that the same mind that creates the spirals can learn to step outside of them. Your thoughts are not facts. Your worries are not predictions. Your mind's attempts to prepare for every possibility come from a place of love for your own well-being and the well-being of those you care about. The circle can become a spiral, the spiral can become a path, and the path can lead you home to the present moment where life is actually happening. Because even the most brilliant foxes sometimes need to remember that the small